I told you, we got to make up for 2 weeks of inactivity. So here we are again, twice in 2 days. You're welcome. And my greatest thanks to the two co-pilots of this podcast, the Broncos and the Eagles, being willing to get back on with me for a second day and go through another set of things as we look forward to 2024. So really the focus yesterday was recapping 2023 and talking about some ideas for going forward. Today, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the change to true position and some of the things that happened in the analytics chat of the Discord today, just to make sure everyone has an idea of what's going on there, and then get into some of the AFC teams that have how we see them being positioned, what we see them doing, and then we'll follow up next week with the NFC team. So either way, it should be a fun conversation. Bill, RJ, thank you.
Glad to be on.
No, and it's appreciated. I mean, the dedication is appreciated. So, as mentioned, first and foremost, we had a conversation last night on the change to true position, looking for something from the commissioners to help teams get a better idea of what's coming. So, if you didn't see it, 8:40 this morning in the analytics chat, Jeremy posted all of the players they had to manually adjust from their true position to their temporary position based off of this year as kind of the bubble year. So this is, again, we've told you what you told you, and we told you what we were going to tell you. Check the list and make sure your guys, if they're transitioning, you know what position they're going to be so that you build your team correctly. This is, again, vital so that you don't get surprised and say, oh, I thought I was going to have more linebackers. Or, wait, why is everybody a defensive tackle? Like, things like that. This is your opportunity before trading goes live and team building really goes live, that you can make sure you understand what you have to make the right decisions for your team. So I implore everybody to please take advantage of this. Go through this list and make sure you have a good understanding of what's happening to your team this year. If the guy's going to hit free agency and you don't feel like it matters that you're going to keep him anyway, don't worry about it. Not a big deal. If it's a critical piece on your team that you're thinking about tagging because they're expiring, make sure you know what you're tagging them for. And last but not least, know who your building blocks are going to be so that you're not in a position where you, again, wake up and say, I'm surprised by what my team looks like after rollover. So first and foremost, focus on that. Any thoughts, guys, or comments on kind of the list or people you were surprised to see on there, or the multitude of lists? I think there was some analysis that happened in the chat as well today.
I'm a big fan of the safeties that got moved to linebacker. I wish more would have gotten moved because a lot of them line up inside the box. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I thought it was a fantastic list. I got amusement by the random linebackers that changed position to linebacker.
Yeah, and that was what Jeremy was talking about. Like some of those, like, for example, Isaiah Simmons, where he was a linebacker, got shifted to safety because the Cardinals tried to move him to safety, and then went back to linebacker after he got traded. So there are a couple of situations like that where there were some movements back, and there will be no change to the player's position. But again, it is now on every owner and each of your responsibility to know what's happening to your team. Just like it's every owner's responsibility to read the bylaws and understand what that means to you and your team, it's now your responsibility to go through and understand everything going on. And I will say, looking at this list right now, one player that really jumps out that I got to say is probably really going to hurt the Bengals next year is all-star Andrew Van Ginkel is moving from linebacker to defensive end. But again, there's a couple of other players that may have an impact to how you want to build your team, like, again, a TJ Watt going from linebacker to D-end, or Christian Wilkins going from D-end to D-tackle, things like that you maybe expect, but it's good to make sure you know what you're doing. And then the other important aspect of this is go to the bylaws, go down to the true position section, and it will tell you what the new starting requirements will be. Again, this has been announced. Chris was on the podcast last night saying this is what's going to happen. And now we've told you once again, this is what the positional changes are going to be. So we know what the positional changes are going to be. We know what the starting requirement changes are going to be. Get smart on this. Take advantage of this week of downtime so you're making smart trades instead of looking up and saying, oops, I didn't know any better. At this point, nobody's going to take that as an excuse, and you're just going to be a dumbass. I'm sorry, but that's the God's honest truth on this. Any additional thoughts on that, or
no?
Nope. It's going to be an interesting month of watching people mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's true. It makes me sad, but it's true. Anyways, so that's where we wanted to start out. So again, we told you what we were going to tell you, and we told you what we told you. Everything's available. Everything's there to look at. Take good care of your team. Now, the other unfortunate part of this that we don't probably know as much yet is teams are going to leave. And Jeremy's going to have to replace owners, and Chris are going to have to replace owners, things like that. So, again, common courtesy, give the owner a little bit of space, give them a little bit of support as they take over the team and get to know what's going on in the league there. Let's not rip people off blind. That's just poor form. Nonetheless, don't be surprised if over the next couple of days we hear we've got a new owner of that team, this team, or the other team. So I'd say keep an eye out for that. Nothing's been announced yet, but obviously that catches all of us a little bit off guard every season. So again, let's all mind our manners and do the right thing here as we continue to have this be a fantastic league and letting teams get up to speed. Again, there's always a learning curve. Bill's first year or two were a painful learning curve, but now he's competing for championships. Other teams catch right on. Some still are learning. So give everyone their time and their space to figure out what's going on so we can continue to make this a fun league. I think that's all my public service announcements. Again, wasn't put up to any of that by the commissioners, but we wanted to make sure that, everyone's doing the right thing here and recognizing the part of the league we're moving into. As mentioned, Jeremy's probably going to either not give rights to or make sure you've paid before you've got everything unlocked. But this is the commissioner's least fun part of the year. So let's everyone give them the support they need. Any additional thoughts or things you think I missed on that intro, guys?
No, I think that was fantastic.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Don't rob the new guys blind. Just make sure they have one eye open instead of two.
Oh God, Bill's gonna be one of those guys sending offers to the new guys. It's gonna be Bill and Goose.
No, fuck that. I am not associated with him in his tactics.
I feel like that's going to be the go-to just sort of diss in the offseason is and again, Goose knows I have no ill will or anything near what Bill has towards him, but just anytime we want to get a rise out of Bill, we're going to compare him to Goose, and that's going to set him off.
Oh, I have animated shirts of Bill holding a goose. It's going to go out to the whole league.
That would fit perfectly next to my Joe Mixon my Samaj P. Ryan shirt that I wear every once in a while on the pod before I got my little hoodie here that I started wearing almost religiously anytime I'm in a hotel. But nonetheless, I think that sounds great. Let me know what we can order one, Bill, RJ. All right, so we'll get into the fun part here of going through each of the divisions. What I asked Bill and RJ to do is we're going to go through and we're going to kind of say, not necessarily for ranking purposes right now, what is the vector we see of each of the teams in the AFC? Were they rising? Did they go kind of all in and they're on their way down? Have they committed to a rebuild? Things of that nature. Or are they a rebuilding team that, hey, 24 seems to be that year where they don't necessarily start pushing all in to get for the playoffs, but they go from the build mode to the compete mode. The obvious example of that, and we'll get to this next pod, is the Lions. A building team that has stockpiled assets, that this seems to be the year where they convert from being a builder to a competitor in their division. So just kind of the vector of where we see each of the teams going, and then something they'd like to see a team in the division do. We're not going to go deep dives right now. There's way too much that's left to happen between roster management at the end of the year, trades, and then obviously free agency and the draft. So anything we predict right now is going to be just wildly and then completely off. So we're not going to waste our time on that. Rather, we'll just kind of say these are things that we like to see happen or think make sense for these people to consider. Because at some point, I think over the weekend after, or maybe early next week, after we get through week 18 in the Pro Bowl, we will see things open and the flurry of activity rejoin the league. So that being said, let's, as we normally do, start with the AFC North and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had some thoughts beforehand, but I'm going to go ahead and put RJ on the spot and have him give his 2 cents on where he thinks the Steelers are going, kind of their relative rating next year, and any other thoughts he has on the team.
I think they're on an upward trajectory. I think this team, maybe not roster-wise, but at least when you consider the owner, I think this team is on the rise. I think he will go from being the 4th team in the division to moving up the ranks and trying to compete for a playoff spot. We saw it this year. A lot of moves are going to need to be made, but the offense is there, non-quarterback offense, I should say.
That's true. Bill, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the defense is solid. That's pretty clear. Offensively, he has to get a quarterback somehow. And he needs to, you can't rely on your wide receiver room. Like, Cortland Sutton just had like a career year out of nowhere. Like, he's not necessarily going to repeat that. And Julio's obviously hopefully going to retire for good. But yeah, I mean, RJ, you said he has the ability to move up in the ranks. I mean, you could just say he has the ability to go from 4th to 3rd. Like
yeah.
The division is just, it's not going anywhere. So, like, until he has the competitive balance that, Bengals has, and the other guys just beat each other out, like, it's just going to be tough sledding. Getting the wrong quarterback with Mac was a big setback.
That's true. And again, I fully agree with the quarterback. I also agree on them being a riser. I think there's some opportunity with some of the challenges that I think each of the other AFC North teams are going to face for this to be the year that Steelers takes a step forward, especially considering some of the players he had that either got injured or underperformed last year. I'm not saying this is the year, but, this is the step in the right direction. In terms of a move I like to see a team make in the AFC North, I look at the Browns and I see a lot of opportunity for the offseason to really go the wrong way for him. So that being said, it would be interesting to see him kind of take the, I'll call it, recommended path that we had for Steelers last year of take a year, recenter yourself, kind of rotate some things that should be rotated, and put yourself in position for 25. This is not a tank conversation. I think his team is way too good to tank top to bottom. But I think there's some redistribution of assets, especially considering the risk associated with where Russ is going to be next year, what Kamara is going to be doing next year, things of that nature, allowing him to pivot, but also sell high on a couple of pieces as well. That may not be like a Dallas Goedert, who's a $16 million tight end who had some challenges this year, but Terry McLaurin's worth a top name. And if he could, maximize Kamara's value while he still could, or maybe Montez Sweat, that contract, things like that. This might be the time to do it.
I think the Browns already shot himself in the foot by getting rid of CeeDee Lamb. I know that he's expensive, and he would have been more expensive if Pats didn't extend him already. But I think that was like a real pivotal decision that he made that messed up his entire season. And I don't see where he has the ability to recoup that level of talent unless he trades multiple assets for a similar talent. But I think that this is the team of the four that, if willing to do so, I would agree with you, Mike, should sell off and redo a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of the more prominent players on his roster aren't old enough to where you can consider them almost out of the league, but they still hold enough value that you could probably trade them for comparable players that are younger.
Yeah,
I would look to make those lateral moves. I'm sure you can find somebody slightly less valuable than Alvin that is 24 years old to pair with Zamir White. That'll give you a little bit longer of a window. I agree with Mike. This might be the team that the Steelers jump while Cleveland takes a year off to kind of just get younger.
Yeah. I mean, he's not going to be bad regardless unless he does like a real sell-off. But yeah, just resetting the age range here would probably be a wise decision.
Take Devondre and some other things and find yourself a decent linebacker that isn't in his 30s.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I don't think Russ is a starter next year, and DeVito definitely is not. So he also has to do a quarterback hunt.
Oh, there's plenty of those hyped kids coming out next year or this year, so I'm sure they could get one.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear what Bill's dog thinks too.
So annoying.
I
would also add Ravens to that as well. His offense is still pretty well set for next year. Not a lot he has to do there to really set his team up, but I think there's some smart pivots he can make to get ready. And again, it's going to be very important for him to look at what's happening to each of his defense positions to see. Again, he doesn't necessarily need to buy a D end because some of his guys are probably going to transition from linebacker to D end, but know what's going on because he really relied on that linebacker depth, with the exception of Wilson, basically three guys at 150 to get him where he needed to go this year. So making sure he's got the right depth for next year in the new format is the smart thing to do here. So I would say him maybe making a move to pivot to make sure he's got the right balance of starters and depth in the new setup is the smart move here.
Yep, I agree. Before we get like super into it, I think one thing should be stated that I don't know if it's obvious, but we'll probably be picking out like larger, like more noteworthy players of like who needs to be moved and things like that. We'll probably touch on like some teams may need to get depth. We may overlook some teams' depth, but it's just we're so far out of next season that, you know, the third defensive end that's going to be productive on a rotating line. Like we don't know necessarily who those players are, but we know, you know, a CeeDee Lamb is going to be productive. We know an Alvin Kamara is still going to be relevant in the league. So just
nope, agree completely.
In case we touch on somebody's team and they, you know, their perception is, no, I have really good depth. You might, we may overlook it, but it's the big names that we're looking at right now.
And again, that's kind of how things go here. Plenty of high-scoring names in this league have no role the previous year and then end up in the Pro Bowl the following year, or as a relied on starter that carries a team to a championship and things like that. I think of like the Grover Stewart, I think, for example, was a no-name and then goes to Indianapolis and ends up being a top 3 D tackle at a really cheap price that Jeremy hits and gets 250 points from, or things like that. Like, we're not going to hit the Grover Stewarts of the world because we have no idea what's happening there. We may highlight some of the bigger names. We may highlight some of the names that are at risk, but we're not ready to go in depth yet because there's way too many decisions to be made.
Yeah, that'll be like who you should be bought, 3 weeks before the season starts, and we talk about who should be bought and sold. We'll probably get more into the weeds then.
Yep. All right. Let's move to the AFC South. This is, I'd say, maybe a more fun division to talk about because there's a little bit more parity of teams that, again, could be on the rise, teams that could be, trying to hang on to positions, things of that nature that, the division may look different. And this year they were kind of also ran, but that could change as some of the building goals come into shape. So we'll start with the easy one. Titans, really pushing for a top 2 or 3 pick. I think he ended up as the 102. Clearly needs some more time and some of these picks to hit. But again, anything we want to add or clarify on that one?
I mean, with the way he finished, like he can, it's up to him if he wants to win more games or not. He has good younger pieces, but if he wants to buy stuff, there's pretty much a glaring need at every position. So if he wants to buy wins or hunt for it, he certainly has the opportunity.
Yeah, I think he has a great opportunity to copy what the Lions has done. Just if he has the patience for it, just be patient, build out. You're going to have top 5 picks for the next 2 years, 3 years, maybe. Just work with them, just be patient. That's kind of how I look at this one. But at the same time, RJ's right. If he wants to buy, he can go buy, and he has Aaron Rodgers, which just so does not fit his team structure whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. And this may be the team that goes and trades a quarterback to the Steelers for some pieces, continues his rebuild appropriately, but again, has just rough count before even talking about freed up cap space from salary adjustments, probably $50 million there, plus whatever gets freed up from salary adjustments, plus the change in cap. So he's going to have some money to do some things in free agency, and it's going to be incumbent on him to make the most of those. But how fast he wants to build is truly his own decision.
As long as he doesn't miss on 102, he should be just fine.
Oh no.
It's never happened before. I don't think there's anything to worry about there.
Now I'm gonna go back and see how many 102s haven't hit. Probably all of them.
Quite a few, probably.
Someone may have been convinced that Zach Wilson was going to be good there and then ended up taking freelance there, and that didn't turn out too well, but did get a shitload of draft capital from that. So, jokes on that other guy.
I mean, either way, regardless of who was picked, then that would have been a bad choice.
No, I mean, this was Justin Fields. Clearly that was the right choice. Let's talk about Jags. Into the beginning of the season, we thought this is the team that between Mahomes, Jacobs, and sort of the offense he had built, he was the front runner for the division. Obviously ran into some challenges in the year and did not finish where he wanted to, but really held on to some of those pieces that are expensive and probably not going to get any cheaper. But, with the cap going up and some of those dollar values falling off, he's probably looking, I'd say, at about 30 to 35 million in cap space that he's going to be able to go supplement this roster with. So I don't know. I feel like he's a level below the other two teams in that we haven't talked about yet. But again, whenever Mahomes is on a team and some of these players are on a team, you can't really, take them for granted.
Yeah, I mean, two things with Jags. Like, do not extend Kyron Williams. Ride that sub-$1 million contract until you absolutely cannot, and hope that he stays relevant to where you can deal him off. But don't extend him. He's going to be way too expensive if you do. And two, just be more active. Like, don't check in once every 3 months. Like, check in once every 3 days. Get active. Like, he has the team to be good, and he just needs to care more.
Yeah, I think we've said like Mahomes should have been broken down a long time ago, and that's that would have came with being active, and yeah, I think that activity part is the biggest thing. But the one move that I would make still is breaking down Mahomes.
I think Mahomes can be renegotiated pretty substantially now because he didn't do great this year, points wise.
Even better for the team that trades for him.
Yeah.
I just think he's still a valuable asset regardless of cap.
Yeah.
He's in that Josh Allen. I mean, he might be above Josh Allen in that assessment, but I just feel like you could get a decent quarterback and other positions just for him.
Yeah.
And
you could bring him down to $23 million by renegotiating him this year. So it will be interesting to see if somebody throws a bag at Jags to go get him. I don't feel like that's going to really do anything. I feel like Jags is going to hang on, but that's
all we know. Jags is leaving. The activity level just hasn't been there. It makes me wonder if he's coming back.
Yeah, that's not unfair. All right, let's talk about the two teams that are probably going to be fighting for the division here. We've got the Texans and the Colts. Colts won the division. Darren Hall looks like garbage, so that's not going to be a long-term starter for him. But Baker Mayfield really took a step forward. Roshan's been getting more and more of that backfield as things have progressed. He still is going to have Paris Campbell at a $30 million plus contract.
Or he's going to reno him for sure down to 15.
Why?
Because he's not going to keep him for $30 million is why.
No, but this is why we have teams that are building. Someone's going to have the cap space. Someone's going to be willing to eat that for a third or fourth round pick. Paris Campbell at $3 million is overpriced right now. I'm sorry, but he is.
Absolutely true.
You don't like the idea of paying $650,000+ per point?
Mike, this is actually perfect for your rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are teams with cap space right now. There's going to be teams with cap space next year. This is the quintessential dump the player with a pick, see if you can get someone to bite off for a fourth rounder instead of having to pay a third, and just do better with that money. I understand why you put the investment in the first place. I understand why you want to use the renegotiation, but there's better uses for that money. And again, same thing. Don't use it on Hassan Reddick either.
No, use it on Derwin.
Yeah, will Derwin actually be cheaper?
He did score 208. I don't know.
Derwin was safety 7.
It's got to be cheaper.
Wait, no, actually, on average, Derwin was safety 5 in salary. is safety 1. So safety 5, you could save $5 million on him. So sure, maybe you do that, but
maybe you just trade him to somebody else.
That said, though, Colt is a massive Chargers fan, so we probably won't do that. But be smart about your renegotiation and don't be shy in dumping some of these players because it's the smart thing to do right now. You're not going to get a lot of, I'd say, free up cap from salary adjustments. You'll get the cap rise. You've got a ton of one-year guys who are going to come free on both offense, primarily defense. Reinvest the money, build out your team, chase a back-to-back divisional win, and live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And then talking about the Texans, these are, I'd say, Sean probably has the front runner position right now in the division. Deshaun's coming back. Gibbs looks to be the best running back in the class right now. Keaton Mitchell was an absolute gem at 331. He's got 2 good young receivers in DK and Devonta. He just has to build around the edges here. So with, probably call it 15 million, maybe 17 million right now that he's going to get to build with, and maybe some opportunity to dump a little bit more cap space to free up some more space plus the increase. I think he's going to be in a good position to really invest in the defense and build what he needs to build. Jumping ahead a little bit, but tight end seems to be what he needs to go trade for.
Yep. Tight end would be very helpful. And then I do agree. Just build out your edges. Use your pick wisely wherever it falls. I think it's a top 10 pick this year. Either trade it for a solid asset or, take best player available kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, if you still believe in Deshaun to be anything legitimate, roll with him. If you don't, move off of him as soon as possible to somebody who does.
Right. And again, with the number of quarterbacks coming out this year and, again, other skill position players that I would say have probably outshined quarterbacks in draft picks recently. Mm-hmm. If he wanted someone other than Deshaun, he probably could easily move off of him and use his own pick to go get that player. But the big move I see for Texans is it's time to move Jameis. Between the guys hitting free agency, the draft, and things of that standpoint, and the number of open positions. We talked about this at some length last night. Don't dump Deshaun, get the contract off there, and better invest that money.
Yeah. Find someone to take Kareem Hunt.
I mean, we'll see. It's not a bad idea to hold. Again, I don't know much about Chubb's recovery timeline, but there may be. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a role for Kareem either on that team or another one early next year as everyone gets back up to speed. Plus, Wicks showed some things. Smith, again, Metcalf. He's got the general framework and pieces. He just needs to continue to build around the edges and not necessarily try and hit the home run on this one. Just singles and doubles at this point.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. This team turned out far better than I had anticipated in the beginning of the year. Just seeing Jahmyr Gibbs actually panning out, moving into DK and Smith as wide receivers. So the offense looks really good. But like Mike said, just hit some doubles, get some decent players. You don't have to buy a whole bunch of superstars.
Acquire as many second-round picks as you can.
Oh man, I think everybody wants to do that.
Well, he did it pretty well last year, and then he sold them. And then it just, I don't know if he considers it a worked out move or not, but I don't know. He tried to do it last year and it just went differently for him.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
All right, let's talk about the AFC East. This is going to be next year's AFC South. The team that whoever we pick later in the offseason is probably not going to be the team that ends up winning the division. It's going to be someone who kind of builds it as they go and surprises, I feel like. Like Dolphins really started their rebuild at the trade deadline. Bills, I feel like, is ripe to start selling. Jets is a riser, but maybe not fast enough. And then Pats, I have enough respect to say God only knows, because he could flip everything he's got after it's been renegotiated, or after everyone kind of gets a little bit hot and bothered for it, or he continues to build around this once he has next year's picks available and tries to win the division. So your guess is as good as mine. But I don't think anyone's looking at the AFC East and says, damn, I'm really afraid to play those teams.
I don't want to play the Jets next year. I don't know if I do or not, but Jets' current roster construction, plus knowing that he is willing to build and be active, and he's got a pretty good war chest of picks. If I'm right there.
No, he traded his first this year. I think he's got second and later picks. He may have a couple, but I don't think he's got any of the premium guys.
Okay, so he's got Stroud. He's got a serious need at running back. I mean, he's got Tank Dell and Deontay Johnson for whatever those guys are worth as a pair. Freiermuth, if he returns, like, yeah, I mean, and his defense is solid. Like, not great by any means, but it's solid.
It's a starter level defense. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to win you a game in the playoffs. It's not going to make you compete.
No.
It's got building blocks.
Yeah, but I think that he's going to be active enough to where he is not going to be someone that I want to play next year. Like, you're right about it being the AFC South. He's going to be the Colts this year. Nobody expects him to make it because of the Bills or whatever else is going on, and he's going to be the one that wins the division.
Right. He's the one right now we think is going to win the division, but, fast forward and we're going to find him,
in third.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wouldn't shock me, to be honest. So,
right.
Nonetheless, so, I'm looking at the chat here. We have 3 viewers in the chat, about 3 viewers in the stream, but one who has popped up the eyes here. Matt, always keeping tabs on us. We appreciate the views here and the continued interest in the league. But in terms of moves I'd like to see, I mean, it would just be fun to see Pats go into flipping mode and say, okay, I've got Kyler Murray now, and I paid whatever for him. Now he's going to be worth $20 million. Either I use my renegotiation on him or somebody else does. Who wants to give me a pick for him? I think I can't remember. Was it the 107 or something like that he traded, or was it his first that he traded for him? I'm trying to remember what he traded for Kyler.
Yeah, he traded his first, and then he traded all his first basically, and then just made it terrible. I think it is the 107 now.
All right. Then Khalil, again, Dotson didn't do much, but I don't think he's necessarily in a must-move position. CD is going to be a Pro Bowler again, and
he's got a solid 4 wide receiver stack. He's got Cade Otton. I mean, I don't hate his offense outside of running back.
He has all the good positions that you want to have set this early.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like running back, and you can fill out a defense as we find out more through the off season and through training camp and whatnot. And
That's
Khalil
true.
Herbert sitting there, that's pretty nice. Like
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you probably go in with like the RB1, maybe the RB2 on a team.
Mm-hmm. Pats does have no picks though,
It's
like, at
fine.
all. He has none.
Pats is a savvy trader. He'll break some things down for lesser picks, start
Mhm.
making that happen again. He'll find some decent things in free agency for a decent price and then move them. Or
Yeah.
he'll keep them and, build out his defense that way.
Yeah. And if Dobbins actually does come back healthy, that'd be pretty helpful.
Pats is another one that I view kind of like the Steelers, just like the owner's really in tune with the league. So he can kind of do what he likes, and there's a pretty high likelihood that he will succeed in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I think the move I'd like to see here is I want to see Bills commit to a build. I know he's never going to want to move Dak Prescott because that's his guy. But Dak, Njoku, and a number of your defenders, this is the time to move them. This is the
Are you
time
talking
to
like a
sell
sell
them.
off and start over, or are you just talking build from what he has?
So if I'm him, I'm trying to break down Dak, Njoku, and Watt, and either maintain or reinvest in youth. Again, he's got a number of different ways to do this, but if you look kind of along the edges, I mean, he's carrying 7 safeties.
Yeah.
Like the team is not set up for you to be competitive. You were competitive nonetheless because you did a great job on IDPs, getting those cheap, and you had the right competitors, the right contributors on offense. So
In your division.
trust yourself that you're going to get the right guys you need on defense.
Yeah.
Break these guys down either into developmental pieces or, again, I feel like if you're going to move Dak, this is the offseason to do it. Like 360 points, one of the top quarterbacks, like in a productive offense, like go get what you need to either win the division or put yourself in the right position. Yes, Eric, you are a freaking draft guru for finding Dak Prescott where you did, but move on and build forward.
Yeah, it's hard to say move on from Dak because of his contract. Like that's the difficult part. I do like the move off of Njoku. I would honestly even move off of both tight ends, like try to do a 2-for-1 kind of deal, which is how he got them anyway. I gave him both of them for Schultz. I think that repeating that process with someone else would be a smart idea.
Yep.
But Eric has his plan, whatever that may be, and
I don't know if he has his plan yet. I think he's still working on that.
I think he needs to move off of Pollard more than anything.
I agree. Probably to me.
Sell that dude for as many picks as you can get him for.
Yep. All right, let's finish up the AFC with the AFC West. Obviously, we have Bill, who won the division and was just AFC champion. Probably not a whole lot he needs to do there. A lot of pieces of strength. It's a question of kind of what do you do with Fields as he approaches 5th-year eligibility, and then kind of making sure you build the supplemental pieces. Salary adjustment, he should get a good amount of money back there. I think there may be I don't know if it's concern about what the Mark Andrews role is going forward, but quality team, good depth. Kind of, it's the next step of any kind of competing process is how do I roll this team over and continue going next year. I would pose the question, and Bill, I fully acknowledge if you don't want to answer this because it's obviously part of your strategy, but
Sure.
what the hell do you do with Sam Howell?
My intent is to sell him in the offseason.
Sell him to whoever believes in him.
I mean, I still believe in him. I don't want to risk it again. Like he carried me to what? How many starts did he have for me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He carried me to 9 wins. Like I'm not mad at the guy. Like if I have to keep him, I'll keep him. Like he's always at worst he's a backup, and he is $1 million. Like that's fine. But my plan is to sell him and roll with Fields.
Right, and again, it's one of those. I would put it almost as a equivalent to what the Bears have to decide. Like with him being benched multiple games despite his performance, you're not gonna get what you're hoping for him. So, does it make sense to sell him? Does it make sense to hold him in the offseason? That's going to be a challenging conversation to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, my bigger concern is like, how do I fit my renegotiation in? How do I get my 5-year option extensions in? Like my team is cap strapped at the moment.
Yeah.
That's my concern. And then how do I blend the age of veteran versus youth like I did this year and keep it going? But that's for the next month to figure out.
That's true. All right, we'll move over to Chargers. Positioned himself to kind of build, going to get Joe Burrow, going to get a couple of other pieces like Garrett Wilson or others. Does not have his first next year, so again, RJ will get the benefit of that. But really starting probably a rebuild process with a couple of these pieces. Probably a good chunk of salary coming back, a good bit of salary falling off. We'll have Burrow, Chubb, and Wilson to build around offense, and a ton of one-year deals. So he's going to have some opportunity to kind of make this roster into what he wants it to be. I think, based off of what he needs to build to be competitive in this division, it's a, break it down for pieces. But I could absolutely see him going more of the more popular route recently of hold Burrow, hold Chubb, hold Burrow, hold Wilson, trade Chubb, and use those two as building blocks on offense as you get picks and opportunity to kind of get the guys you want to get.
So I like his wide receiver pair of Rice and Wilson, but to really kickstart this, he's going to have to potentially sell one of them. I just don't know which one you pick to sell.
The less surefire one, so probably Rice.
You sell Rice. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Like, they scored almost equivalents. Rice is playing with Mahomes as his quarterback, is basically his number one option for the second half this year. And Garrett Wilson is playing with dog shit as his quarterback.
Yeah. No, I know. Like it makes sense just off the name. Like you obviously want to keep Garrett, right? But like, I don't know. I think in this situation, what are you really like gaining from holding, either one of them? Technically, you're still, I mean, if Raiders, Chiefs, and I don't sell off and rebuild, like he's still like at least 2 years out.
Yeah, okay. I mean, they're good enough assets to hold on to for that period. Like in 2 years, how old is Burrow going to be? 29.
29.
And then Wilson would be 25.
Yeah,
fine.
25, and Rice will be 25 also.
Yeah, so if you want to hold on, like, those are definitely the type of players if you want to hold on to. It would make a rebuild a little bit harder because your picks aren't going to be as great, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there's no like this is the right way to rebuild. So
No, yeah. I mean, Chubb is probably the piece that he would want to move more than anything. But
I agree with that. My question is like, how valuable is he at this point?
I think to any real competitor that needs a running back upgrade or just an actual running back, probably pretty valuable. Like I bet Giants would take him.
Fair.
You know, I don't know if he can give up Najee for him, but I bet he'd try to take him.
That's true. But again, I think he holding and building. If you can get the right players for those guys, do it. If not, just hold. Someone will pay you the right value at some point. Let's talk about Raiders. So barely missed the playoffs, but you look at the offensive core: Lamar, Jonathan Taylor, Zach Charbonnet. Receivers, again, Diami Brown looks like a miss. Pierce had some value here at the end. Wilson's had hit or miss periods. I think Mike Williams is on his IR. Wait, no, he traded him to you, right? Right, RJ?
What?
Mike Williams?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm a proud owner of a Mike Williams.
again, the linebackers are really carrying the day for him, and I'd say all three of those guys, with maybe the exception of Quincy, probably maintain their position.
I think Quincy stays as well because he's a middle, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah, but Quincy might get hit with a holdout.
Well, I mean, he can extend him here in the early off season and prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
So,
is he Pro Bowl? I wonder if he is. I don't know. I'll look that up. But yeah, Raiders is his entire team is relying on Lamar Jackson being good or not. Like last year, his team was average. It was because Lamar was mediocre. This year, his team goes nuts, more often than not, and it's because Lamar's having a great year. Like it's so crazy. I don't know if you do you sell Lamar?
No. I mean, I was gonna say, lucky for him, Lamar Jackson is good at football, so
No, I know he's
probably
good.
be successful.
Do you sell Lamar? Because I feel like you got to sell JT. You got to get out of that contract.
How expensive is he going to be next year?
Let me find out. I'll look that up here.
I mean, I would just try to I'll try to find some more wide receivers. Maybe a tight end because I don't know if Jonnu does that again.
JT is going to be 16.5.
That's fine. That's not
that's
crazy.
Before extension.
Yeah. You just ride out the whatever he's worth, right now. Like you do the 5th year and just I don't know, let him walk. Maybe get a comp pick.
Right.
Like unless he returns to form, then
right. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough because like he has solid pieces. I don't know, man. It's so hard to gauge this team because like he's another one that feels very much like like Steelers or Browns. Like we're in like maybe the second toughest division in the AFC, and we did the same thing this year to each other, basically, that the AFC North did to each other. But I don't know. There's holes here that make it a question of do you continue to build, or do you try to sell out?
No, there's no reason to sell out. There's not enough like high end stuff to sell off.
That is true.
So like it's a lot of like mid level stuff. This is the exact team that like you want to you want to acquire those like noteworthy assets. So like all of the picks that he brings in should go right back out for like one player, one stud wide receiver, and just keep turning names into younger names.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a perfectly fine team to just turn over everything and make it younger, but not the type of team where you're like, oh, break it down, because it's like, what are you gonna end up with? Like a couple of first round picks from Lamar, like a first round pick from JT. You might cobble together 2 or 3 more.
I get your point. Like it's already young enough to where you can keep going with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of players that are worth like second and thirds, but it's not like a whole lot of like the high end stuff. And that's like all the legwork of like slowly retooling a team is already done. Just go get the big guys and continue to retool, obviously.
Quincy is not Pro Bowl, so he could just be a straightforward extension. Which is crazy. That contract is going to be so good forever. But no, I do like his wide receiver room with Pierce and Michael Wilson. Like, great upside in those two.
Yep.
Yeah, just go get a wide receiver 1.
Yep.
And like Mike Williams wasn't that type of a thing, so I don't feel like he traded off some like asset that he can't get back. Like, yeah. I think you hunt for somebody better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got my second in this year's draft and Chiefs 4th. And then he has his 1, 2, 3, and 5 and 25.
That's even better. Yeah, like right around draft time or like training camp. You go hunt for a top 10 receiver, like one on like 7, 8, and you just throw like a first in 2 seconds and maybe some other stuff.
Do you try to take that second and buy Devontae Adams at $40 million?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that I just gave him that as an idea.
That's how you become the third problem. Like the third problematic team in that division is you hit like one really good value like that, and then you still go out and buy that other stud wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. We got one more.
But I'd imagine Adams isn't the only player that's going to be a type of perceived steal like that in the offseason. There's a lot of really inflated contracts.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very interested to see what happens with the Cowboys. We'll talk about that next week, though.
Yeah. Well, we'll close out with our last kind of coverage team here, the Chiefs. Bill, why don't you start on this one?
Yeah.
No, I don't care what you think about this team because you're not going to say anything nice or anything.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. I can be unbiased about it.
Well, okay, go ahead. Show me. I'm going to turn my camera back on for this one so I can have the proper positioning. Go ahead.
Okay, so look, the one move that he made this year that I really don't understand, like genuinely don't understand, is why he picked up Kendrick Bourne after I cut him. He's not eligible for any kind of like comp pick or anything. It doesn't make any sense. But everything else that he does is consistent. Like the one problem he's going to have is Derek Carr. Probably, I don't know that he has a future in New Orleans, but that's another thing. But I mean, his offense is solid. Like he accumulates, the number 2 guy with a couple of number 1 guys in there, and it's always consistent. He's just going to keep doing it again. I think this might be the proper time to move off of Tyler Lockett, though.
I agree with that. I would say I've seen some Goose teams over the years, and other than the tight end position, which is amazing, this is the least impressive Goose team I've seen. But I have a feeling he'll probably move some things around, and he'll probably hit on more players than he did this year.
Yeah, I don't think he has Aaron Donald come week 1. Like Mike, you said it whenever he acquired him. That was like the most anti-Goose move ever, acquiring that contract. So I don't see him keeping it. But then it's a question of like, what do you do with your defense? Like, Matt Milano is going to come back. That's perfectly fine. So linebacker is probably set there. Safety's fine. What happens to his D ends? Do they stay at D end? Do they go to D tackle? I don't know enough about those situations. Just reading it to know, but I think his defense is going to need some work in the offseason. But his offense is fine.
Oh, see, I have the complete opposite opinion. Like, I think his defense is fine. Those are all players that are like safe in their jobs. They're going to be productive next year. Sure, you may have to swap some names around, get the right amount of defensive ends and linebackers again. But like, that offense is worse than middling. Like,
well, I think it all depends on Ramondre. Like, if he isn't the guy next year, I think that whole RB room is worthless.
I think it is right now. And like, just Rasheem Blackshear, sure, he's a great like utility guy, but is he gonna? It was still just 41 points.
Yeah.
McLaughlin, I like him. I really do. But is he gonna be a player in the offense, or was he just was his production just out of necessity this year?
Probably just a 1-year wonder.
Houston, I think, is done with Pierce. I think New England's done with Stevenson. The only good thing about Jeff Wilson is he didn't have some horrific arm injury this year. Like the wide receivers are all fake number 2s on their team.
They're specialists or they're old.
Right. And then I mean, I didn't include Tyler Lockett in that. Like, he's the only one that's like, yeah, he's probably gonna put up 191 points next year and the year after.
Yeah. Osborne will probably repeat with 120.
I don't know about that.
I mean, he's gonna be a 3 again, right?
Maybe. Who cares who the 3 is when your 1 and 2 are insane?
Fair.
So the one thing I will say is a lot of the Goose style players that you'd want to have on a contract going forward are on 1-year deals. Like Stephon Gilmore would be a good player to have at $600K for what he scores. Obviously, it's corner, so we can replace it. But then like Jonathan Cooper, 1-year deal. Jaleel McLaughlin, 1-year deal, mid-contract. Like, there's a lot of players that I see being quintessential Goose guys who are expiring, and then plenty of folks who are longer contracts that are more expensive than Goose would normally pay for in the past. So I think he'll be active. I think, again, as he always is, I think he'll, between free agency, expiring contracts, things like that, he'll be able to open up something like $30 million in space, if not more, at the start of the off season to make some moves. I mean, are we sure Aaron Donald's not going to retire?
No, nobody's certain. I think he's year to year.
Because again, I say this as experience owning him last year. Like, everyone was telling me, I don't want to trade for Aaron Donald. He's going to retire. So again, he got outscored by Ed Oliver. Like, is this guy really going to keep going in the position here? So we'll see.
Well, so like out of the 4 teams in the division, it's not going to happen. But wouldn't this be the proper team to do a rebuild off of?
No.
I don't know. I kind of think it could be. He's got enough assets to acquire enough picks to make it worth it, but it's just not a Goose thing to do, as far as I can.
People want names. Who's the name that Goose is going to move to get the picks he wants? Like Ramondre is someone's going to give a late first for Ramondre. No one's going to give more than that. Like again, put this in perspective. I could not get a top 10 pick for Christian McCaffrey last year.
Right.
Who is going to give Goose a non-playoff first for anyone he'd want to sell right now?
Well, I mean, is that a necessity to do a rebuild? Is to get a top 16 pick?
The way Goose wants to do it, like unless he's going to cycle the pick into another player, which again would not shock me.
Yeah.
No, like that's not going to happen here. So I almost feel like Goose is just going to be patient. The way Goose is always patient. He's going to get the names, flip the names, turn those into later picks, and then cycle those picks into points next year. It's the way he does things. So I'm not concerned that, he's going to be losing some of these names. I'm not concerned that his team may be, quote, weaker than it normally is. He's not going to rebuild, and he's going to find a way to find a quarterback with a second round pick that is going to be in that $8 to $12 million range and give him what he needs. So again, this team is not rebuilding. This team is not playing.
Yeah, like I said, he's not going to do it, but it just felt like he would be the one of the 4 that would be the prime one to do it.
Yeah.
Again,
I would be surprised, but who knows? I've been surprised before.
Yeah. By the way, we did legitimately not talk about Chris.
Yeah, well, he's further down. That's his own damn fault for everything here. So we'll go ahead and give him a few moments of coverage. Let's see, who's his quarterback? Daniel Jones,
Davis Mills, and Jake Browning. Oh, he has DJ.
Ugh.
So he needs a quarterback, is what we're saying.
I mean, Chris is going to be Chris. Chris is going to be patient here. So that's why I'm not jumping out into conclusions here. If anything, he's going to move off of Swift early or Warren early to try and avoid some of the risk of the offseason. And if he can't get what he wants for that, which is going to be maybe that quarterback or something like that, then he'll just hold and roll the dice. Because having Jaden Reed, Justin Jefferson, Marquise Brown, and Jalen Waddle at receiver is a marked advantage. And again, you don't want to talk about renegotiation. Marquise Brown, again, I don't know how many games he missed, but I got to imagine is a just value to renegotiate, probably at half of the price, at which point he has 470 plus point, probably normal receivers scoring for him, and all of them making less than some legit money here. So obviously he's going to have to expend Justin, so that's not going to last, but he's going to find a way to get the money here. He's got, $9 million now. He's got to do the extension, so he'll figure it out. But that's going to be the big thing, is finding the money to extend Justin and then being patient with some of the other moves he's got to make.
Yeah. Hollywood missed 4 games this year, so he's definitely renegotiable. I just don't know if that's much of a deal.
Wide receiver. Let's see. Point per game. Marquis. So there's Brown. Hollywood Brown, based off point per game, was not in the top 32. So let's see where he is in the top 100. Let's work by average again. Brown.
Well, it's okay because Josh Reynolds is 32 in contract and he's $9 million.
Marquise Brown was wide receiver 51 this year.
So he's going to get half.
He's going to get halved. Because, yes, to
$9 million.
confirm, wide receiver 51 is below that. So,
$9 million Marquise Brown. Fantastic.
yeah. So he's going to have a cheap-ass Waddle. He's going to have a cheap-ass Marquise Brown. He's going to have a cheap-ass Jaden Reed. Wildly expensive Justin Jefferson.
He's gonna be the Packers. He's gonna have to go all in because Justin and Waddle are gonna be stupid expensive after next year.
I mean, we'll see.
Waddle has a 5th-year option coming up.
Yeah, I think his challenge is going to be activating his players and finding the money to extend Justin. So that may require him to be a little bit more forward-thinking than he normally is, and to move off some of these players. But beyond that,
find a way to get rid of Van Jefferson.
it's $5 million. That's going to be easy.
Maybe move off of your love child, TJ.
$16 million for a top 2 or 3 tight end in his position is worth the price here. I'd say it's more, does he need to do something with one of his linebackers? I think Daniel's going to transfer.
I think he needs to move off of Donnell. Just age-wise, he's going to be 30, going to be expensive, and he's going to be a defensive end, which he already seems to have plenty of.
Could be.
Yeah.
All right. Hour and 12 minutes. We went over an hour yesterday. We went over an hour again today. You're welcome. We're making up for some lost time here and kicking things off. At some point in the next few days, I believe the commissions will be opening up trading. I'm sure Jeremy will properly announce it when that happens. I'm guessing that's probably going to be Monday or whatever day they're done with week 18. I can't even keep track at this point. And then craziness will begin. So we'll do our preview / in progress preview of the NFC next week. And for the first time in, God, I don't know, like a year, talk about trades.
Feels like a year.
Truly, this is the darkest timeline. Any closing thoughts before we shut it down for the week?
No.
Nope.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you for joining on the back-to-back here. It is wildly appreciated. Well, keep an eye out for the commissioner news here. And if anything else pops up for changes or if that's locked down and when trading will reopen. But I think we're all waiting with bated breath to see where the offseason takes us. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.